She was 9 years old. She weighed 60 pounds. On the afternoon of March 6, 1959, she walked out of her front door carrying 7 small boxes of mints and never came home. That is not a story about a child who wandered off. That is a story about a predator who chose the smallest, most harmless target on the street, and it would take 62 years, 3 generations of detectives, and a glass jar sitting untouched in an evidence locker to finally expose him. Washington in 1959 was the kind of place where kids walked to school alone and neighbors left their doors unlocked. Candy Rogers lived above a neighborhood grocery store with her mother Elaine. Her grandparents lived next door. She had a dog named Shep. She was 4'4", 60 pounds, and shy by nature, but she was a bluebird in the Campfire Girls of America, and that mattered to her. March 6th was the first day of the mint selling season. She had a plan: sell enough mints to earn a sales badge and win a free week of summer camp. She could only carry 7 boxes. She was too small for more. In the half hour before the 4 o'clock start time, she sat with her grandmother and ate an oatmeal cookie. She played with Shep. She talked about which neighbors she would visit first. She was not nervous. She was excited. At exactly 4 o'clock, Candy Rogers stepped out into the cold March air and started knocking on doors. Darkness falls fast in the Pacific Northwest in early March. By 5:30, there was no sign of her. Her grandfather went outside to look. He walked the block. Nobody had seen her. Her mother arrived home from a hair appointment to find her daughter missing. By nightfall, police had been called. There were dozens of other Campfire Girls out that same evening, little girls in the same uniforms with the same boxes, and that made it nearly impossible to trace Candy's exact path. Then, at around 9 o'clock, searchers found something that changed everything. On Pettit Drive, a road climbing a hill known locally as Doomsday Hill, boxes of Campfire mints were scattered across the ground. Not dropped, scattered, like they had been thrown from a moving car window by someone driving away fast. One box had a partial fingerprint, lifted, preserved, sent to the FBI, never identified. By 9 o'clock on March 6, 1959, Spokane understood one thing: Candy Rogers had not wandered off. Someone had taken her. By the next morning, more than 1,200 people showed up to find her. Marines, Boy Scouts, utility workers, mail carriers, horseback riders. The U.S. Air Force sent helicopters. They had no cell phones, no GPS, no cameras. They had scattered mint boxes in a trail that ended at the edge of a bridge. On March 7th, just one day after Candy disappeared, a U.S. Air Force helicopter struck high-tension power lines over the search area and crashed into the Spokane River. 3 crew members were killed. 3 men died searching for one 9-year-old girl. The city was grieving in 2 directions at once, and Candy had still not been found. 16 days went by. On March 21st, 2 airmen hunting in the woods off Old Trails Road, 7 miles from Candy's home, noticed something placed carefully near a tree. A pair of small girls' shoes, not dropped, just left. They reported it. The next morning, a search party found Candy Rogers buried under branches and pine needles, 50 yards off the road. The cause of death was strangulation. The weapon was a strip of cloth torn from her own slip, the garment she had been wearing when she left home. Her feet were bound with another strip of the same slip. She was 9 years old. Medical examiners found evidence of a darker violation that added a layer of horror to an already unthinkable crime. Every piece of evidence was carefully preserved. The investigators in 1959 had no idea what future technology would be able to extract from biological material decades later, but they preserved it anyway. For the next 40 years, Spokane detectives believed they knew who killed Candy Rogers. They had a name: Hugh Morse, a Spokane motorcycle club member who had been arrested 4 years before the murder in California for attempting to molest 2 Girl Scouts selling cookies door to door. A chilling echo of exactly what happened to Candy when she went missing. Morse showed up to help search. He walked those streets alongside grieving neighbors looking for a little girl he almost certainly already knew was dead. He lived 2 blocks from her home. The case against him hardened over decades into near certainty. And then in 2001, DNA from Candy's clothing was tested against Hugh Morse. It did not match. The profile went into CO DIS. 0 hits. The real killer had never appeared in a single tip, a single witness, statement, or a single police report in 62 years. He had been right there the whole time, and nobody had ever looked at him. There is one reason this case was ever solved. Not the detectives, not the technology, not the lab in Texas. All of those things mattered, but none of them would have worked without a single decision made by an unknown investigator in 1959. Someone put Candy's underwear in a glass mason jar and sealed it shut. Glass does not degrade. Glass does not absorb moisture. That airtight seal, made in an era with no reason to think about genetic evidence, created a near-perfect preservation environment. In 2018, a forensic scientist named Brittany Wright, who had grown up hearing Candy's name as a warning from her own parents, took the case. The DNA was severely degraded. One lab turned it away. Then Wright found a laboratory in Texas called Othram, which specialized in exactly the kind of work other labs reject. She sent them what remained. She described it as the very last drops. Othram built a genealogical profile and ran it through an ancestry database. The results narrowed to 3 brothers, all deceased, all from Spokane: John Ray Hoff, James Andrew Hoff, Terry Allen Hoff. Genealogy cannot distinguish between brothers. They needed a living relative. Only one of the 3 had children. Detective Dave Stormont picked up the phone and called a woman named Kathy Hoff, who had spent her entire life believing her father died because he was depressed. Within 45 minutes of that call, she was at Spokane Police Headquarters. She already knew. In those 45 minutes, she had found the story of a 9-year-old girl murdered in Spokane in 1959 while selling campfire mints. She walked into that police station carrying the weight of what she suspected. She volunteered her DNA without hesitation. The results confirmed it. The DNA from Candy's clothing was 2.9 million times more likely to belong to a relative of Kathy Hoff than to any random person. Investigators exhumed John Ray Hoff's body, and the final probability, 25 quintillion to 1. The number 25 followed by 18 zeros. John Ray Hoff was born in Spokane in 1938. He grew up 1 mile from Candy's home. He was 20 years old when he killed her, a U.S. Army soldier assigned to bases just outside his own city. In 1961, 2 years after the murder, he was arrested for grabbing a woman, tying her up using her own clothing, and strangling her before fleeing. She survived only because something interrupted him. Candy did not. He served 6 months. He drifted. He was not a man building a life. And then there is the detail that cuts deeper than everything else. John Hoff had a stepsister. She was 10 years old in 1959. A campfire girl, she was Candy Rogers' assigned big sister in the program. She knew Candy. She cared about Candy. When Candy disappeared, this girl sat next to her brother, next to John Hoff, and cried. She told him how much she missed her little campfire sister. He sat there and said nothing. John Ray Hoff died in 1970. He shot himself in the head. The date he chose was his daughter's birthday, the day she turned 9 years old, the same age as Candy Rogers, when he killed her. And when investigators went to find where he was buried, they discovered something that made the room go quiet. For 51 years, John Ray Hoff was buried in the same cemetery as Candy Rogers, yards apart. While her family visited her grave and wondered who had done this, her killer lay in the same ground, in the same silence, in the same city. When his family learned this, they arranged, without being asked, to move his remains to a different cemetery so that Candy could finally have some peace. 62 years, 8 months, and 13 days. Candy Rogers was 9 years old. She wanted to earn a badge. She had a dog named Shep and a grandmother who gave her oatmeal cookies and a whole street full of neighbors she was excited to visit. She had a future that belonged to her by right. The killer's daughter, Kathy Hoff, gave a statement at the press conference. She said, "I am very, very sorry for what my dad did. I hope it gives Candy's family peace, knowing that even though it is not justice, his name has this on it now, and they can know it is solved. There would be no trial, no courtroom, no sentencing. He had already escaped all of that, but his name is now permanently attached to what he did. The record corrected the truth on paper. It is not justice, but it is not nothing. If the story stayed with you, subscribe. We cover the cases that refuse to stay buried. New episode every week.